board right here is sitting, I'm not gonna let you finish.
No, I'm going to finish.
This whole
I'm
board
going to
here,
finish. I'm
this
going
whole
to
board
finish.
here is
I'm
representing the
going
entire
to
county.
finish. I'm with the Fresno County Board of Supervisors. I talked to Brian Pacheco. He understands exactly what I'm expressing.
I am with the Fresno Council of Governments. You are
Excellent.
sitting in that board, and
That's
you are
right.
representing Brian Pacheco here today.
And I have a right
Therefore,
to speak,
you
and
need
you're
to
trying to
listen.
stop me from speaking,
Listen.
and I'm going to speak.
Okay, let's finish it up so we can move on.
I'm happy to
Because if
finish it
not,
up, but
we're
I'm going to
gonna stay
speak.
here. Okay.
I didn't say I walk the whole entire county. I said I walk my district. My district is where it failed. And if it's not a focus on fixing their streets and roads, it will fail again along with other things we'll talk
agree.
about next.
I agree, roads need to be fixed.
Good.
But for
I'm done.
you to say that the entire county wants that,
I didn't say the
well,
entire.
well, you said the vast majority of people wants that, right?
Yes, the
Go
people, I
on.
said the people that I spoke to,
Why the
that's
entire
what they
county?
want. And
Why the
that's
entire
where
county?
it failed.
In the previous meeting of FCRPA, or FCPA, you said that you didn't care about the groups of people. To me, that is not.
I never said that.
Yes,
That's a
you did say
complete
that.
lie. I
Yes,
guess
you
I'm
did say that.
tired. No, I didn't.
Own it.
Well, I'm not gonna own anything that I didn't say, and I want you to
Now,
prove
we
that.
need, yes, we need to continue.
Yes.
You
with the
prove that,
item.
Mr. Martinez, don't make
Okay.
an accusation like that. You prove it. Get the
We
recording and
need,
prove
we
it.
need to move on, this was just an informational, we're not even at the
Don't
item
make
that there's gonna be
accusations
more
that are bullshit.
discussion. There's gonna be more discussion on the next item, that's an action item, this is only informational
Good. Let's move
on their, work that they have, I'm sorry. The outreach, I'm sorry, thank you. At the policy board May 29th meeting, staff was directed to prepare a more detailed plan to achieve the one county, one plan goal for 2026 measure renewal effort. Since then, the representatives of the Fresno County Transportation Authority, FCTA, Transportation for All, Central Valley Community Foundation, and Fresno COG have met at least 4 times in an effort to consolidate 2 separate measure C-ballot processes. In those meetings, there is a full agreement on the following principles. Having a single measure for voters to consider is essential. Renewing Measure C is important to everyone in the community in the county. The goal is to have one measure on November 2026 ballot. Elected officials will have the final word on the measure and expenditure plan after significant community input throughout the process. Discussions in June have all largely focused on timeline necessary to ensure that the process of Fresno COG and the FCTA are following under the California Public Utility Code Division 15, specifically section 14200-142277, which requires a full expenditure plan to be placed before voters will be fulfilled. The group have tentatively agreed on a revised timeline that significantly accelerates the public input process. For Fresno COG and the FCTA have been following, and as illustrated by the flow chart, we have this here, the flow chart attached to the staff report, and is presenting it to the COG board for review and approval. The new timeline calls for primary for revisions of the steering committee process with a new schedule requiring 2 to 3 meetings each month for 3 to 4 hour sessions and address vision and priorities, category allocation and implementing guidelines. The steering committee is proposed to require attendance from each member, which addresses the concern about the attendance routinely and with an allowance to no more than 2 absences before a member is removed. Consensus is on all the issues will be sought routinely. However, a minimum of 70% threshold will be required for a item issue to be approved. The July Fresno COG Policy Board meeting will include an agenda item reporting on the steering committee process regarding the visioning and priorities, as well as category allocations, and seeking feedback. The jurisdiction at this stage will be critical to the steering committee's discussion, ultimate, recommendations. In August, the steering committee focus will turn to governance and accountability, and COG staff will likely need to call a special meeting to review those recommendations. In August, the early September expenditure plan drafted is expected to begin with the intention of having a draft plan for review by September 11th. A Big Tent community-wide review approval event by the end of September, in September 11th, a Big Tent community-wide review approval event by the end of September. This would be followed by statistically validate the surveying, polling, and the plan begins also in October. Following the results of any necessary adjustments, the expenditure plan will come back for approval for a special joint meeting with FCTA and Fresno COG board members. Then the jurisdictions, the city councils, board of supervisors for approval and resolutions. This is anticipated to occur beginning as early as mid-October. Alongside the entire process, the group are recommending a facilitation and support or synthesis team to assist DKS consultant Kendall Flint with reconciling the integrating information from steering committee along with the public input collected. In addition, while the KDS scope of work includes drafting the expenditure plan, it is recommended that the additional legal and technical resources be available during this stage of the process. As the Measure C administrating agency, FCTA, will also have the opportunity to review terms outlined above and will be kept abreast of all developments as they occur. This is an action item. Approve the adjustments project timeline and the scope changes outlined above and in the attached flow chart, that the adjustments will initiate any changes to the contractual agreements with the Fresno Council, with the Fresno COG consultants, but in the event that it is required, staff will return to the board with these changes at a later date. So now, I wanna thank the board for allowing us to, and giving the direction at that time for us to be part of this process. Victor and I are representing this board. We are here at the best interest of all of our mayors, not just for one area or another area, the entire Fresno County. We all matter, and we all know what our communities need. So we are going to make sure that everybody is heard throughout this process. I'm sorry, it's not a humorous situation right now. This is serious. I gave you the floor, I respect that. You give me that respect, okay? So, to me, it's important to Victor. We have been working very hard. You guys don't know how much we've had to take time out of our day because we care. And we wanted the best measure for all, and to pass this measure. Because too many measures out there is gonna fail. There's no one that's gonna win in the end. So we need to focus on uniting and put our differences aside and focus on the community and all members of the community, not just one side. So with that, I'm not sure if there's any questions regarding to the process, now that we can have that discussion without arguing and just give your input so we can move this along, because if not, we're all gonna fail. Victor, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, no, I think it's very important, so we have multiple meetings, right? So that we can come up with a plan, which is a process. And these, so things here that are very, very important to note. One of them is that the final saying remains in the hands of the elected officials. That's very, very clear, and I think everybody wanted that. The other thing is that this is what we have before you guys tonight here, is that this is a process, it's not an outcome. So we'll start the process, and we'll go into the first meeting, visioning and priorities, and then out of that meeting, an outcome will come once they reach consensus, which will be approved by these board here. If not, it will be taken back to a drawing board, amendments, right? That's why we are having the meetings in between, so that we don't have a final meeting all the way at the end and say without knowing, like similar to Mayor Bond said, you know, later down in the year, we don't have a meeting, a single meeting, which is only to approve or disapprove. No, we want to make sure the elected officials have a say.
Good point.
Whether we approve it or not, right? And we'll let the steering committee do their job and do their work, and they are accountable for doing that work and making sure that they come to the meetings, but the recommendations will come to these board here. Now, it's very important that we develop a well-balanced budget, measure that could be supported by the entire county, not just a selected group of people. You know, there's, I really and strongly believe that roads need to be fixed, and I think I have the record here of mentioning roads every single meeting that we had, of how we live in a first world country with third world roads out there in Mendota, right?
Yeah.
Said that multiple times, and probably that's the case in many of the cities here, but there's also a need for other things, right? There's people that needs other things, and I'm not talking about flying cars. I'm talking about transportation, buses.
Yeah.
You know, those type of things here. So it's very important that we all continue and you know, I ask, let's move forward. And what are the options that we have? We have to try it, right? We have to go out there, and I hear a lot of speculation, a lot of different people saying different things. I don't like that group, I don't, you know, like those people, what's going on with these? That might just be a speculation. What if we go to the first meeting and we find a very successful meeting that we all can get behind the outcome?
So I think Dyer wants to say something. I also thank you, Lynn, for stepping up in here. I think it's important. You were the facilitator that led this whole, all these meetings, so.
Questions about what has occurred and to provide our comments, and is there going to be community comment after we speak?
Yes, first, we'll open it up for the board, and then, of course, Lynn will also do, somewhat of a presentation.
Small group, and then you can open the question.
I'm fine with that, I'm fine with
You good with that?
that. You were gonna do it anyway, so.
You were, okay, right? You good?
I was thinking it all on. I was thinking it all on.
Yes, I was gonna do exactly what
I just
wanted.
thank God I'm not sitting next to Gary, I would, I feel like bloodshed.
Actually, hope I can say that.
I don't know if it'll be like this on a problem.
It'll be on video, shortly, so it's not, you watch it over and over again. So, let me add on to Mayor Beltran and Mayor Martinez. The small work group, I was the manager of the short straw, I was the organizer of that. So let me just make a couple of comments to add to what was in your staff report that, Mayor Beltran read into the record. I wanted to talk a little bit about the process, and I also wanted to dispel some of the really great rumors that are flying around out there about this work. It's like a sport, and so I wanna try to see if I can get at those. So as I think we mentioned, in June, we said, we think we can put these two processes together. The COG process and transportation for all. And the board voted 11-4 to say, yes, go back and try to do that. And that's what you have in front of you tonight. So that was our task. And over the last 4 weeks, we have worked really hard to do that. The group was Alma and Victor, myself and Chairman Mendez from FCTA, representatives from Transportation for All, and the Central Valley Community Foundation. So that was the work group that met over the last 4 weeks. And I will say, to be fully transparent, Buddy is not here, he agreed with parts of what we did, but at the end, he did not support the plan you have in front of you. So we all agree with the exception of Chairman Mendez. So I wanna make sure I get that on the record. So let me just highlight a few things. First of all, we agreed on 3 principles. Can't start with stuff, you gotta start with principles. One is one measure, full stop. And specifically, one measure that people will vote for. If you have one measure that no one votes for, it won't really help. So one measure that people will support. The second, we are committed to the elected officials making the final decision. We were elected to do that. We want to be informed by our public, but the decisions end here, and in your city councils and board of supervisors. And the third agreement we started was we were going to share data. People are like, I don't like their data, they don't like our data. It doesn't matter. It's all data, it informs the work. So we agreed to share data as a first step to integrating the effort. So that's where we started. I want to assure you that this work is done in good faith. Now, there are those who say that Transportation for All is secretly creating their own measure in a dark room somewhere. While we all supposedly do this work together, and they're doing all of this negotiation with us in bad faith, and they're gonna take what we do and do something on their own. That is unequivocally false, and that rumor, it's fun to perpetuate, but it's absolutely not true. But I will be direct and say there is talk of other measures, but that talk of other measures is driven largely by other elected officials and former county employees. So unlike 2022, where we had a conflict between the COG process and the community groups, this time around we have government working against ourselves, which is pure insanity. But that's what we have now. But I want to be perfectly clear that Transportation for All has no dark room where they're secretly doing this work. So I ask if you hear that, you can dispel that. It is not true. It's fun to spread, but it's not true. The second thing I want to reinforce is this role of elected officials. The final call on the measure, what's in it, what's not, how it's allocated, all of that rests with you, all of us as elected officials. The map in front of you shows at least one joint meeting between COG and SCTA to talk just about Measure C. Last time we had people say, oh, I didn't know it was in Measure C. Okay, we could do a better job of that. This board and SCTA should talk about it. We actually wanted 3 shared meetings. We agreed on 1, but we could add others if that was the pleasure of this board. But the meetings are to make sure, as elected officials, you are the champion in Wrigley and Clovis and Fireball, that you understand it, you can explain why it matters to your voters. I was editing this as I was going on, we were yelling at each other. So a couple of comments on the document that you have. So let's talk about the steering committee for a minute. Steering committee for a minute, wait a minute. The proposal that you see before you is one measure, one county, one steering committee. So that was the principle. And without going into all the weeds, let me just give you a little context. How did we land on 38 members? So COG had 23, now this slide said 25. So I masked 25.
It's supposed to be 26.
And 1 seat is unfilled, is that correct?
Correct.
So you filled 2 seats since I typed this at the big clock, okay? Okay, so 25, 1 vacant seat, 26 total. Transportation for All Collaborative is 30 plus. They have a subset leadership team of 12. So 25 or 26 and 12 equals 38. That's how we got to 38. Now, we argued about this for a while. It was sort of a hard no, hard yes, can't keep going if we can't resolve this. Some said we could only have 35, totally arbitrary, at 35. Some said T for All could have only 2 seats, okay? They wanted 12. We landed at 8, we tried 8, we didn't get to 8. And then it dawned on all of us that if this was a collaborative, their steering committee meets ours. And that's how we got to 38 people. It'd be like if you had a family of 12 and I wanted your family to come to dinner, but I only wanted 10. So they have 12 people, their 12 meets our 25 equals 37. That's how we got there. It's not the number that's important, it's the merging of the two. It is still 2/3 city COG people appointed, 1/3 community group. So That is how the numbers work out. Kind of coincidentally, the math is perfectly balanced, but that's how we got there. It's not a secret, it's not, nobody was promised anything, that is how we got to the number of 38. Now, I've also heard people say 38 is too many people. Okay, maybe. I might be the only person standing, is that moving? That was on the 2006 steering committee, the 2022, and here I am again, 2000, whatever year this is, 26. I went back, why do I still have the file, I'm not sure. The steering committee in 2006 was 29 people with at least 20 staff. It was a lot more staff in those days, I guess. And the last meeting we had in the 2006 measure was in a room at the old convention center. We had 60 people in the room, and we got to agreement. So it can be done. In 2022, that group was somewhere between 35 and 40. Couldn't find that file, but somewhere in that range. And what's important is it's not the number that matters, it's the facilitator. If you have a good facilitator, that's their job. And they will manage 35, 36, 32, it does not matter. Kendall is a skilled facilitator, and I'm deeply sorry to hear about her father and the challenges she's had. So our thoughts are with her, but she is skilled at what she does, and that is her job, to find consensus in 37 people. So the number is sort of a red herring that people want to argue about, but it really is not relevant. I've also heard, well, all these people joining the steering committee means my city's not gonna get anything. That is mathematically impossible. It's not going to happen that way. The numbers are still in favor, but the point is the consensus, right? It isn't about what Clovis wants, or what your district wants, or what Mendota wants, right? Our job is to get to consensus as a group. So the best way for your city to not get anything is to not put this together and not make this work tonight and have the measure fail, and then we can say goodbye to Measure C. If you want your city to get nothing, I suggest we go down that path. And most of all, remember, the steering committee is an advisory board. You can reject everything they say. You can reject it today's Thursday, you can reject it all. They are advisory to you, the elected officials in this room and every council chamber in the county. So I guess the other thing I heard is there's some things in the staff report that we didn't really, all the details worked out. We worked really hard the last 4 weeks. We met on the nights of kids' graduation, we met on Sundays, we met on Friday nights. We worked hard. And I'm not saying that's so good for you. We all wanted to do it because we thought it was the right thing to do. But there are some details that the steering committee, when they merge, are going to have to work out, like what does consensus look like? What do you do if you don't get there? And how many absences do you? I signed up for a steering committee that was 6 meetings, now it's 12, and can I miss 3, not 2? So all that has to be worked out. It's not to be argued or debated here tonight, that's what a steering committee is supposed to do. So enough of me, but let me just say this, lastly. No one expects or has been promised anything at all. No one expects to get everything they want. Not even me, Garry, not even me. I know that's disappointing, not even me. So nobody expects to get everything that they want. We are not always going to agree. We may not always even like each other. And honestly sitting here, I can't even guarantee you that map is going to get us to success. I can't even promise that. But I can promise if we don't do this, our chances of succeeding with this measure and that measure and somebody else's measure, none of them will pass. But whether it's successful or not is up to people in this room. And I just want to add one personal point of privilege because I am so darn old. One thing I know for sure is this. We can do this work in a way that elevates our county, that gives voters confidence in local government, or we can do it in ways that create conflict and name calling and look super great on social media, and in ways that are counterproductive, confusing to voters, and virtually guaranteed that the measure will fail, and then we can all watch Measure C disappear. And we are better than that as a county, and so with maybe from where I sit after all of these years and the 3 measures, I really urge your support for this. I'm not promising perfect, but I am promising our best chance. So thank you for the chance. Look forward to keeping you